Hi everyone, so in today's video I'm going to be doing a 2019 writing year wrap up. I've never done one of these before, but 2019 was actually the first year in a while that I created absolutely no goals for myself. And I actually have mentioned this before, but I don't work very well with goals. I've never liked them. Even from when I was a kid, I didn't really like goals. I find they restrain me. It's kind of like outlining. I don't outline either. And I usually don't achieve them anyway. So instead of letting myself down this year, I just said, take it easy. So I thought I would go through all of the finished products I created in 2019, finished minus the novel I'm working on right now. I'm going to be doing this in order of which the project was completed. So I'm going to first start out with a story I wrote in January called Sleight of Hand. So this was the first real short story I'd completed. Up until then, I'd really worked only on flash fiction, which is fine, but I'd never had any experience with writing actual short fiction. I don't know the word count for this story, but I'll put it here. It's probably 2,000 something words. And I had to write this for a writing class, and I actually have a writing vlog. It's probably one of the earlier ones of me writing this short story. I will link it in the description if you are interested in watching me have an existential crisis. I had to write a short story for my final writing portfolio. It was for a class I took in grade 12, and I had to write a short story and then polish two of my other pieces I'd written in the class. Unfortunately, I was kind of running behind. I couldn't come up with any ideas, so I started at the last minute. It was due probably like the 10th of January, and I started at the very beginning of January, which is quite early to write and edit a short story, but I made an attempt. It's actually an adaptation off of a short fiction piece. It was a flash fiction piece I'd also written for the exact same class. I just had to adapt it. I really had no time to come up with a new idea. And I was thinking of actually expanding that story. That flash fiction story was called Water Babies. And so I kind of took some ideas from the expanded version and I brought it to life in the new story, Sleight of Hand. So I will actually just link the video if you want to see me and my thought process of me going through conceptualizing it and then having a breakdown. I will link it. You can see it all happen in real time. But I'm not going to be pursuing publication with this one or anything. It was just sort of me panicking to get this done. But if you guys are interested in excerpts, I'm going to be doing an adjoining blog post for this video, and in that video I'll put excerpts where I can. Some short stories I'm not going to excerpt because I am going to seek publication, or I'm thinking about seeking publication for some of them, so I'm not going to be posting excerpts for all of them. But if you're interested, all of the bonus excerpts are going to be on my blog, so check out the post whenever it's up. I will put the link down there. And so the second thing I finished in 2019 was actually my 9th novel, Rewired. And so this is book 6 of the Fostered series, and I'd been working on it for a while, probably like a year and a half at that point. I wrote 2 chapters in 2019. As you can see, most of it was written in 2018. The first chapter I wrote was called Younger, and that was chapter 22. I will link that update that I wrote in the description if you want some excerpts. There's tons. And then I also wrote another chapter called Bad Habits, which was chapter 23, which is the last chapter of the book. I completed the book actually in about March of 2019, but I didn't know I'd actually completed it. I think I have some videos as well. I think accidentally finishing the first draft. I have 2 parts of that writing vlog. I will link that down below if you also want to check that out. Me again having another crisis. It took me about until April of 2019 to come to terms with, yep, that was the last chapter of the book. Bye, I'm gonna work on something else. Yeah, Rewired was quite fun to finish. I didn't realize I wasn't gonna work on another like a direct Fostered book for the rest of the year. I thought I was going to get started with book 7 quite early on, but I was having a slight bit of a crisis. I just did a post on this. It was like a Tumblr ask game where I shared all of the stuff I didn't finish in 2019. So if you want the opposite of this video, check that post out too. And I sort of talked about this and my thought process and how it felt to sort of not really know what I was doing. And so that kind of happened to that book. And it's a little bit of a mess now, but that's fine. So the third thing I completed in 2019 was a short story called NYC in Your Apartment. And this short story came out of a fever dream. And it was crazy because I had never really written short fiction. The only other short fiction I'd completed was Sleight of Hand. And something in me just pumped out this story. And I wrote a blurb here and I'll read it. It says, Joanne, a 20-year-old college dropout, insists she's making bad decisions because a poltergeist is possessing her. Very on brand. Ghosts. It's also in second person. I really need to stop overusing that point of view. I'm sorry. It's a bit of a different story. I have an update for it. I feel like I'm linking you guys to all the posts down below. I did like this short story quite a bit. There are some of my favorite characters. We follow Joanne, obviously. She's a bit disconnected the whole story. And then we have Julian, her boyfriend, who is the cutest soft boy. He's just so kind, adorable. I want to hug him. And Magdalena, who is a friend that Joanne meets at a cathedral, and she's just this old lady. She's so cute. She kind of reminds me of my grandma. Moving on, we're gonna write another short story for 2019, and that one was called Water Burials for the Living. I kind of wanted to continue riding the wave of short fiction mojo after NYC in Your Apartment, so I think I wrote this one not too long after NYC in Your Apartment. These all came to be probably in the summerish spring. So this is the blurb. Izzo, Lewis, and Dahlia head to a lake to try to contact the ghost of a boy rumored to haunt it. And I really like it. It features a super queer 12-year-old protagonist who is just scary. She's unafraid to take you down. Izzo is like one of my favorite voices I've written. She's just such a badass. She kind of reminds me of young Reeve, which is scary, but I did enjoy writing that story. It only took a few days, and I'm really happy to have it under my belt. But yeah, some of my favorite dialogue I've written. But now we're going to be moving on to the chapbook I wrote, which I have a video on. Again, more links in the description. And that one is called Talk Therapy for Apparitions. I don't have a copy because I never made one for myself. I only made one for some friends, and then a teacher, and I made 0 for myself, and I don't feel like making one for myself, so that's okay. It exists digitally. But this was a chapbook consisting of 8 poems that were basically all about me, and I don't really write about myself, but I don't know, I think I was going through some shit, so I don't know why I wrote this. I just wanted to angst, and I wanted to try something new, and sometimes being a beginner at something is the most therapeutic. I liked the final product. Physically, the writing I don't stand, but you know, that's okay. Next, I'm gonna move on to another poem I wrote, just a single solo poem called Rubber Band Gods in 40-Degree Weather, and this also came from angsting. I had just gotten back from therapy, and it be like that, you know. I wasn't going through a great experience with that, and so I kind of just vented, I guess, in a poem. So the next story I wrote was How Long It Takes to Drown. This was actually a flash fiction story I wrote for university, so I graduated high school at this point. Bye. It had to be 500 words or less based off of a photo prompt that we got. The photo is so specific, it was really hard to fit into 500 words, but I just did what I usually do. We did some murder, lots of water imagery, children, really bad things to put together. I'm sorry, ignore I said that. I've got a 95 on it. My TA was the sweetest to this story, and I actually really enjoyed writing it. It came to me quite quickly, which I was kind of stressed about, but it did teach me a lot about structure. I think I finally learned where to put an inciting incident in a short story after writing this piece, because I did a lot of research on flash fiction. 500 words is a very short word count. You really don't have space, so you have to write for the economy like heck. Just the flash fiction genre taught me a lot about form. I'm gonna read what I wrote because I can't recite it off the top of my head. I wrote this in September. So this is about a young girl named Tulip who plays a water game with homicidal older boy Rocky and glitzy neighbor Joanna. As you can see, I have a lot of Joanne derivatives in my writing. I probably have 3,000 Joannas. Of course there's murder. So then another important thing that happened in 2019, this is not something I completed, but my Fostered series, the ongoing series that needs to end, turned 5 on October 2nd of this year, which is insane. But if you want to see anything celebrating Fostered, let me know. Maybe like a Q&A. You can ask me questions about it, but let me know what y'all want to see, because I still want to celebrate the 5th birthday a little bit. But the next thing I wrote in 2019 is a short story called The Species is Dead. This is the most recent work I've completed in terms of short fiction, and probably will be for a while. And I wrote this again for my writing class. This was for the fiction unit, and I had too much fun writing this story. Thank you, Sarah and Shaylin, for helping me plan this bizarre story. And it's really bizarre. It's the weirdest thing I've written. I have mentioned it in the writing update I just posted, which I'll link below if you want to hear a little bit more about it. But this is the blurb that I wrote. I said, a small town turns murderous when their local invasive species, the Janices, begin dying. So this is quite a short story. It is about 1100 words. The max was like 1250, so it still would have been quite short, but I think it fits quite nicely in the shorter sort of realm. I like that I'm making a name for myself by being the girl who started murdering Janices in her short fiction. So the next thing I completed in 2019 is another story called Read the Fine Print. This is very much outside of my comfort zone. It was for Creative Nonfiction Unit. Like I said, don't really write about myself. I find myself so off-putting. I didn't hate this as much as I thought I would. So I learned a lot from writing in CNF. Even though I'm a fiction writer, CNF is just amazing. They teach you a lot about reflection, and I think that is beautifully translated into fiction too. So I definitely took some notes down from things I learned from my awesome TA. All my TAs have been great. And so I wrote this piece, and it's about 1,000 words. I kind of struggled to get it to word count because of the form. I wrote it in the form of a prescription label. Yeah, I really actually like the concept. I don't know if I executed it very well. I'm yet to get feedback on that and know what I got on it. And I really admire this form. If any of y'all are CNF writers, let me know. And if you have any favorite CNF pieces. But anyway, I don't really know that much about CNF. We only went through a few classes, but what I did learn was really helpful in helping me reflect in terms of fiction, especially when a narrator is telling a story from the past. But anyway, we're going to be moving on to the last project that I finished in 2019. This is what I'm working on right now, and this is Mouthwork, my novel. At the beginning of 2019, if you told me this was going to be my 10th book, I would not have believed you. Mouthwork was actually started out as a passion project of mine, and school for me, I'm a hardcore student. I love being a student, but it caused me some emotional turmoil at the beginning of 2019. I was going through some stuff, and Mouthwork came to be in a time when I wanted to take care of myself. So I started it in about January, and from this point, I'd written a few little short stories, little fanfics for myself. Be a fan of your own writing, write fanfic for yourself, it's totally fine. But at this point, I'd written a few of my boys, Lonan and Harrison. They're characters in Fostered. They're some of the main characters, and they have a very complicated relationship that I love messing around with off the page. Obviously, I can't do that when I'm writing in Reeve's head because she's the main narrator and she's not going to be observing her brother's love life, though I feel like she might. I needed something to just be happy, a happy place for me, and so Mouthwork turned into that. At this point, of course, I'd written probably 3 other stories with them, and going into Mouthwork, I knew I wanted to be a bit longer. I was thinking maybe about 10,000 words, maybe a little novella length sort of thing. I wasn't thinking I'd write a novel. I didn't think this was going to be very important for me in developing the main book plot, which is book 7, Fostered. Mouthwork is just a spin-off. And then as I continued to write it, I realized I really liked writing in this point of view. It's written in third person, limited present tense. I try to limit it. I love third present. It's not very common, but I love that point of view. And I think it works really well for this book because it's kind of like somebody else is telling the story, but it's very close to the characters at the same time. Like they themselves aren't telling it, but maybe somebody they told is telling it. Who knows who that person is? Maybe it's Reeve. I'm currently at 9 chapters. I just hit 35,000 words yesterday, and I'm aiming for 50,000. So that means I'm about 70% through the book. I'm gonna leave my Write Club link down below because I constantly update that, literally constantly. I'm sorry if any of you follow my Write Club and get email notifications whenever I update that I wrote 2 words, but I will leave the link to the entire Mouthwork tab for all chapters linked in the description as well, and I share all the excerpts. I'm never going to get this published because obviously it's way too far along the timeline. I'm not interested in publishing Fostered. I love sharing the work with you guys. I'm really happy this book turned into a book. It was really not supposed to be. Originally it was only supposed to be limited, and then Harrison was the only one with a point of view, and then I said, how about we do 2 point of views, because I haven't done that since I was 12, and we really stand doing whatever the fuck we want in this house. So I added another point of view. I added Lonan's point of view into the book, and Lonan is a really dear character to me. have had a lot of fun getting into both of their heads and getting to know them. I don't characterize traditionally. I never do character maps. I don't even write down character profiles or character descriptions. I've written fostered for 5 years and I've never really characterized any of these characters, so to really get to know them, I like to write them, and this was so helpful, not only so that I understood them more, but that I could understand where Reeve was coming from in her book in book 7, and so that I had the context, because originally I was like, Lonan and Harrison in book 7 are just going to be lovey-dovey, it's going to be great, you know? No, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between the end of book 6 and the start of book 7, which is about 8 months, and Mouthwork, this is book 6, this is book 7. Mouthwork takes place about right here, and there's still some time until book 7. But it did help fill me in, and I'm so happy that I wrote this project. I wrote a blurb for it on the back of a book cover that I made, which I will link below. You probably already saw it, but I made a dust jacket for a class for this book. I wrote this blurb. I think it's bad, but I'm going to read it anyway because it's kind of like a dramatic YA blurb, and this book isn't YA. I wouldn't say it's litfic, it's kind of genre weird. I don't really know what genre it is, but anyway, let's read it in a dramatic voice, shall we? The dark room isn't haunted, but a dead man owns it, and they know which one. Ooh. Harrison isn't sleeping, Lonan isn't seeing ghosts, but there's a spirit in the woods, something unafraid to veer them apart, and it's surfacing in them both. Of course I mentioned ghosts in the blurb. Super on brand. I think you should love your project, and I definitely love this one, even when it gives me a headache, and I'm so glad that I wrote it this year. I really didn't write very much of it. As you can see from January, I've written 35,000 words. Of course, it was a bit on-off. I started really working on it probably late spring, early summer, but still, I haven't made that much progress, but I still love it, and that's okay. Who cares about progress? Progress is whatever you do, even if it's 2 words, which is what I tell myself when I update my Write Club every 2 minutes. The grand total for this year, who's ready to find out how many words I wrote this year? Keep in mind, when I was 13, I wrote 600,000 words in 1 year. I don't know how the fuck I did that, girl. If I could go back to that, dang. Yes, 13-year-old Rachel, get it, sis. This year I wrote 57,000 words, which is quite cool. Usually at the end of a year I might come away with like a book or half a book, but this year I have short stories, I have poems, and I have a creative nonfiction piece. So I've really expanded what I've written this year, and even though it's 57,000 words, when I originally calculated that, which, by the way, you don't have to do that at the end of your year. Do I recommend doing it? No, I did it for this video. Words don't really matter. As you can see, I wrote like 10 times less than I did when I was 13 years old. I'm 18 now. You know, 2019 was a great writing year. I didn't spend as much time writing as I wanted to because I was very busy. I was finishing high school, and then I just started university, and I just finished my first semester and trying to keep up my scholarship. 2020 is going to be better. I'm going to try to commit myself a little bit more to writing, just slightly bit more, but even with all of my busy schedule, I still managed to write 57,000 words, which is insane. And so write what you can. Don't feel pressured to write more than you're able to at a moment. Whatever you write is valid, and that's progress. And I hope you guys had a great 2019 writing year. Let me know how you guys did in the comments. You don't have to calculate the exact amount of words you wrote in a year. Don't do that. Just tell me, what was your favorite thing that you wrote this year? I'd love to know, and check out all of the links that I have in the description if you want to keep up with what happened over the year if you don't follow my blog. And again, look out for the blog post. It might not come out until a while after this video, but if you want to check out some of the excerpts, they will definitely be linked down below. I'm going to try to finish my book in 2020, so crossing our fingers. This isn't going to be the last video for 2019. For now, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys had a great year, and Happy New Year, guys. Welcome to the 20s. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.